Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoteric Podcast, Episode 13, in which I interview Jeff Trosper about his teacher, Andrew de Passano. But first, let's check in with our friend Dru. How's it going, Dru?
Pretty good. So, happy birthday, by the way, belated.
Thank you very much.
I have a segment here on the Esoterinerd called The Real Rosicrucian Order, in which we talk about the history of the Rosicrucian Order. Now, of course, the three manifestations that I know of at the present time are the Society Rosicruciana in Anglia. Then there's the Rosicrucian et Aurea Crucis, which is basically in any traditional Golden Dawn order, when you reach the grade of 5 = 6, then you're considered a member of the Rosicrucian et Aurea Crucis. And there's one or two people out there debating about whether or not they're allowed to have the copyright to that, which they're not. And then there's AMORC, the Ancient and Mystical Order Rosicrucis, up in San Jose, and you were a member of that, are you not?
5-6 years ago, when I was living in that area, I was an officer there in the Grand Temple and an employee, and I was fully gung-ho for that period of time. And
what was that like? Because I see the pictures, and it looks beautiful. I haven't had the privilege of going to the museum yet or checking it out.
It is a gem. Yeah, you have got to go visit that at some point. And there's definitely an energy, and it's deep-rooted there. It's been there for a long time, so...
Yeah.
It has an atmosphere that is really, really nice. Whether you're a member or not, you can go there and just this, the symbolism that's everywhere, and the plants, and just the vibe. It's all good.
Yeah.
But the museum, definitely worth a visit. If you want to see some mummies, or you want to see some stuff from some well-known pharaohs and all that, it's a great place to do that.
These days, though, you're up in Idaho, right?
I'm in Colorado right now.
Oh, which part of Colorado?
Well, outside of Denver. It's actually Breckenridge.
There's 2 temples in Denver.
Yeah, I connected with one of them, the Colorado Golden Dawn. I don't know.
Is it Sean?
Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you guys are in touch. He's actually been on the Esoteric podcast already.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk to him a lot because he was doing an alchemy class. And
yeah.
Got that in. But I knew that you guys would know each other.
Well, if that isn't my wife, Honored Soar FSM, on the other line, because that's what we call each other around the house.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, are you both there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
This is Dru and I.
Oh, hey, Dru. Can Dru hear me? Hey.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. Are you guys doing a podcast?
Dru's in Colorado. He's already in touch with that guy in Colorado that I interviewed the other day.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that crazy? Small world.
So cool, yeah. Wow, yeah, I love the small community. It's nice.
Very cool, very cool. And our mutual friend, ICL, is somewhere in town.
Is that right?
Apparently, they actually meet up with him once a year, and they're talking about doing a joint class.
Well, that's great. I'm going to finally get to meet Frater ICL.
You haven't met him in person?
No, I've never met him.
Oh, you always struck me as similar type of person, both very, very serious about the work.
Well, I hope that's true.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, serious to a fault, like we talk about esoteric nerds, like people who take D&D way too seriously. Like, I like to, make it a little bit light, because sometimes people in our work, get to take it really, really heavy and seriously, and so I like to kind of poke a little fun and say, you're just a bit of a nerd, right?
That's why we love you, Edward.
The subject of tonight's episode is my father's teacher, Andrew de Passano. Andrew de Passano was founder and instructor at the Temple of Esoteric Science, which was his house in Hollywood Hills. In the early 1980s, especially 1983 through 1987, my dad worked closely with Andrew de Passano, and he also taught me much of what Andrew taught him. So, around 2012, I ended up in a Facebook group full of his students that had all found each other after all these years. This is sure to be the first of several Esoterinerd episodes specifically focusing on Andrew de Passano and his life and teachings. And so, without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we?
Greetings, brother. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. Your name was Jeff Trosper, right?
Trosper, yeah.
And you were a student of Andrew de Passano.
Yes. I was a student from like 89 to 90 through 93.
My interest is that my dad was a student of his, and he taught me when I was very young to meditate Om, Ah, Hum, and he had Tibetan bells.
Om, Ah, Hum, yeah.
Yeah, with the S and the Awin and the O and the Ah and the Hung and the E and to the north and to the south. So I mean, that was basically my personal kind of spiritual center, and that I lost because I forgot about it, and my dad died. And so one day, a couple years ago, I went to that reunion of students of Andrew de Passano, and I talked to another Jeff, and he reminded me the words. And since then, I've brought the practice back, and it's been really great having that back into my life. So I only met Andrew once. I was 7 years old when I met him. And so I'm reaching out to people who knew him so I can find out more about him and more about his teachings, and let the world know more about him, because, you know, he's not one of the largely Googled authors or teachers, but I think that he had a lot to offer.
Oh no, he was a teacher ahead of his time. He combined the Eastern and Western esoteric traditions. Not that many high beings in any period have pulled that off.
Right.
You know, the Theosophists, they had a little bit of influence from the East, but they didn't really grasp it well. Andrew knew a lot of the Indian and Tibetan
he had traveled there,
type
right?
of teachings and meditations, which he added to his, Western esoteric upbringing. His teacher, Castellani.
Is that the Secretariat of the Italian chapter of the Theosophical Society?
I don't think that they're specifically identified as a theosophical offshoot, although clearly they were influenced. And Castellani, he did bring in a number of the Western occult traditions, such as the ones that can be found in, say, the Secret Teachings of All Ages,
right,
Manly P. Hall, and so on. So, it was clearly a combination, and so that alone is unique. You won't find that basically in any of the traditions,
right?
To have so much of a fusion of Eastern and Western continuity.
He talked a lot about the astral plane.
Well, sure, everybody does. You could find that in most of the Western esoteric tradition.
Right. More so, though.
Well, I mean, you find that even in Yogananda's, Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography. He talks about the physical, the astral, and the causal or mental planes being the main divisions.
Like the veils, the five veils.
Well, whether you say there's 7 or 5 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah, depending on the tradition. Yeah,
and the Egyptians had like 12 or more or whatever, but probably the 3 main ones would be easiest to try and divide the universe, the manifest universe, into the physical, the astral or dream, visualization, creative imagery, daydreaming, all of that. The arts would all
history
fit into that, and then the causal or mental plane would be the higher, more the original, highest thinking, the
maybe the philosophic Mercury.
What? Say again?
Oh, I was thinking maybe the philosophic Mercury could...
Sure. Yes, Hermes, Trismegistus Thoth, and the Mercury tradition of the higher wisdom and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The perennial philosophy. And
he had a bit of influence from a Colombian shaman?
I don't recall that part vividly.
Okay.
I know that he did go. He made a few trips to Mexico, including Yucatan, Mexico. He had some shamanic type of influences and experiences, but I'm not sure that the Don Juan type of tradition or Mayan philosophical inheritance was a huge part of his teaching.
Okay.
But he liked to add.
Yeah, to reach out beyond the limits of what he already knew. Yeah.
Right.
I recall something about he was working with a particular kind of agave plant. But, I don't know if anybody knew that story. Because at the reunion, a lot of people would remember part of a story and then ask, anybody? And there'd be crickets, and then we'd move on to the next.
Sure. Well, he was extremely eclectic. That was his gift. I'm an astrologer, and I did his chart, and he was born in St. Petersburg in 1905. I don't know if you know his.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, he was born right on the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius. He had like 3 houses in Sag, as well as his sun was at 0 degrees of Sag. So he had philosophical inclination, higher learning, eclectic, reverence for other traditions and cultures and so forth beyond the norm. Of course, he was Italian, born in Russia. His father was actually heir to the Duchy of I believe it was Genoa.
Huh.
Well, of course, Garibaldi had brought about independence, and the country had been transformed into a republic. So the old
right. It was in
nobility couldn't really inherit.
I have a friend who's a Luciani who hasn't much but the name and the certificate saying she's nobility. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, it's interesting, and it's kind of a classic part of occult tradition. They call them the black nobility, meaning the black part meaning more like hidden, mysterious, occult, and not very visible. But the black nobility still, according to some conspiracy theorists, have influence throughout various levels of banking and finance, and
if you have money, you have influence.
Bilderberg groups and Trilateral Commission and all that.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Andrew's father, although he certainly was not a pauper by any means. He had a lot of money, and he got into the arms industry.
Ooh.
And moved to when he moved to Russia, Tsarist Russia. And
so he might have helped a little bit with the revolution.
Yeah, no, but being on the other side.
Oh, trying to put down the revolution.
Supported the whites.
Yeah,
they supported the whites, and clearly enough, of course, he had to flee when the revolution came. That's where
I'm pretty sure I was a redcoat general in a past life, so I know how that is. Ending up on the wrong side of history.
Right. Yeah, no, that is funny. It reminds me of that show Poldark, where in the very first episode, because he was a redcoat officer in the Revolutionary War. When he comes back, one of the British aristocrats said, "How could you have let that happen?" And he said, "Well, we were fighting on the wrong side."
Yeah.
But anyway, because Poldark was a romantic revolutionary type of guy.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I did a lot of research on this guy, just not to get too far off track, but but assuming whether it was me or not, this particular guy named Charles, who had a title, and he got a letter in the mail from the king saying, "Guess what? You get to go down to the pub, get 200 men, buy a boat, meet us in Jamaica, await further instructions." And then he ends up a little bit later being a general in one of the battles in the Revolutionary War. So he doesn't give a fuck. He's just like annoyed that he's not having tea at home, And so meanwhile, you have the people who are really, really, really serious about fighting. They're on their homeland. This is like a really serious thing for them. So I mean, the odds were...
Oh, no, the British weren't really into the Revolutionary War.
They were just sort of doing
As a matter of fact, I forget which British general claimed that they weren't really all that interested in the North American phase of the conflict at all. He said that the entirety of North America was not worth one sugar island, meaning, of course, the Caribbean. That's where the real money was. And North America was a side story. There were a few furs involved and some tobacco, but it wasn't financially a gold mine like the Caribbean was.
Yeah.
So we were a kind of a side story. And the French came in eventually and made sure that we lost that, because this was an ongoing battle which lasted through the 7 Years' War, the Revolutionary War, and on into the Napoleonic Wars. It lasted a long time, this endless conflict between the British and French.
Right. Which then kind of prompted a lot of the world revolutions and then communism and the Red Scare.
Right, exactly. Right,
here we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, Andrew was hip deep in that. He was he because of his aristocratic upbringing and being involved in the arms trade and so forth, he supported Mussolini, and he didn't really discover himself until it was during the war, and he realized that he was going to have to change sides. They were going to lose, and his occult tradition was really coming together for him, and it was only then that he, came into his own. Was after the war.
Interesting.
And he moved to Mexico and married Virginia and so forth. But that was when he really came into his own. He was a product. Up till then, he was more of a product of just his cultural inheritance of being one of the bastions of of reactionary power and so forth.
I have a friend who once upon a time, I have several friends who once upon a time were youngsters on Sunset Boulevard working at a place called the Source Restaurant. And
sure, famous.
A few of them remember Andrew de Passano really well. Apparently he was around.
Well, Andrew, long before that I came, I came in '89, and he died in '93 when I was a student. But long before that, the early '80s, I guess late '70s maybe also, he was giving, 5 classes a week.
Right, that was my dad. In 1983, my dad was going to those classes. And he was teaching me what he learned. But I was 5, so I was just getting the 5-year-old version.
Oh, wow, that's still pretty impressive.
There's another one who was 7 at the time, and apparently she used to hang out at those meetings. And I only went to one of them, so I do remember the place in the Hollywood Hills.
Right.
I remember he said, "You have a very bright papa."
Oh, no kidding. Wow, interesting. That's great. Wow. Well, do you have those books? There are collections. I think I have some around somewhere. I would have to research. But that collect some of the teachings and techniques. Mm-hmm. Do you have any of those?
I don't.
Yucana, she has some, huh?
She has some tapes, and she's going to dig those up, and then I'm going to convert them.
No, tapes are great. I have some tapes also.
Yeah.
But
I think you transcribed one of the tapes, And I put it up on a website. I'm Pymander Aquarian is one of my names.
Uh-huh. No, it's great. To resurrect the techniques and concepts would be great.
Yeah.
Because he was, his ideas were very original and quite a contribution. Not too many, as brilliant as Manly P. Hall was, he didn't have he didn't have a collection of techniques, practical techniques.
Right.
The
he was like bringing in the information, kind of.
Right. It was more just teaching you the perennial philosophy, which is fine and everything, but it doesn't have as transformative of an effect.
Right.
Let me see if I can find those.
I'm probably going to do several Andrew de Passano episodes on the podcast, so I'll probably call this Andrew de Passano Part 1, and then I'll get some of the interviews. I'll find some of the highlights.
You could resurrect it for sure. That would be a great contribution for people.
Yeah, he talked a lot about compassion.
Yes. I remember one thing he said, which stuck with me, was that treat other people's feelings like they were made of the finest crystal. That was a touching statement. I had, never heard it put quite that way. And considering the Pope and his message of compassion right now, and of course, the Dalai Lama and
the Bodhisattva's compassion. Yeah,
exactly. So there is a clear continuity there of trying to find the balance, like the Tibetans always talked about, of wisdom and compassion.
Right.
Did you ever hear about some of the various visualization techniques? And
if I did, I've probably forgotten. I'd love to hear anything you'd like to share.
I don't know if I wouldn't dare to try and teach these things anymore.
Maybe just
there was a thing called the mate meditation. I remember that one. I did that one for a while.
Mate, M-A-D-E?
M-A-T-E,
okay.
Like where you would visualize somebody to come to you. When I find these things, it'll probably have the accurate version, but you were supposed to visualize the person coming to you, but in shadow, so you couldn't see their face. You weren't supposed to visualize what they were supposed to look like, because you'd only mess it up. That's the theory. Because we always visualize a lot of the wrong things. That we're supposed to emote the feeling of what we're trying, the highest communion, the finest aspects of love and cooperation, or whatever that the person's supposed to have, and then you visualize them slowly coming towards you with sort of light behind them, so that you couldn't see exactly what they looked like, and then you would kind of merge with them when they would come from a distance and then gradually come into your area. Anyway, that was really an abbreviated version of it, but that's the kind of he had a number of these techniques.
So was that intended to unite you with your own inner?
Well, now that it would, like in Jungian terms, that's another concept that would be perhaps involved. But this was specifically to actually bring a person.
Okay.
But the fact that it would bring, like for a guy, the anima.
The anima, yeah.
Yeah, if the anima came to you, it would certainly be easier
to find a mate.
To find a physical manifestation of that and so forth. So, but he had a lot of interesting techniques. He had us, visualize meetings with other beings and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, he had us connecting with alien and deity type of beings that we would write down. I have those somewhere. I want to make sure I still have those. It was a fabulous collection, and since I write, mythological fantasy, I should probably refer to some of those as would probably help my work.
My dad had two puppets that Andrew gave him. One was blue and one was yellow, and they both had long white beards. And with the instruction to put them up in a high place and forget about them.
Wow.
And my dad, I think at one point they ended up being mine when my dad passed away, but that was 1993, and I don't know where they are.
Oh, that's funny. My mother died in 93 also.
Yeah, I guess that was a year for
and Andrew died that same year. Yeah.
Oh, he did in 1993?
Yes.
Oh, my God, I didn't realize that.
I believe it was in July or August, yes.
Okay, my dad passed away in September 20th.
Right, and my mother died in September, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in September of 93.
Rough year. And then Nightmare Before Christmas came out.
To
cheer us up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that was a hard year. Yeah.
I remember, that movie got my mind off it for a couple of seconds. Yeah.
Which movie?
Oh, Nightmare Before Christmas, Jack Skellington. That came out like a month later, So
I'd forgotten.
I remember being in a very dark place and seeing that movie, and it being something that made me smile. So, hey, Tim Burton, if you're listening, thanks for that.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
Well, I love this whole thing about Andrew, and I hope that I can get as much information together for my own self and for the anyone else who's interested. I know that Zarathustra, the Aquarian, he says that Andrew is the missing piece. That basically we've brought together Golden Dawn, we've brought together Tibetan Buddhism, we've brought together all of these different things, but the element that's missing is Andrew. And so I said, okay, I'll see if I can get that.
He combined a number of those elements.
Yeah. But I guess there's some magic that Andrew had. Yeah.
Yes. No, I think so too. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's fascinating. And to reintroduce, I remember that after he died, there was like a lot of confusion because he had no successor. There was no one to do the teachings.
Right. I wouldn't presume to be
ready.
That, but I mean, at the very least, I can do my best to bring those pieces together. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it seemed as if we all realized that we were supposed to do it, to kind of flower on our own at that point, or as much as we could, and not depend on the great teacher. But his works can certainly help in that process. And a number of his techniques were really invaluable at the time. So I'm going to search around for those, and I will make sure I know I have them somewhere. I know I kept them. It would be great, I don't know if Shakina can do it or if you would do it, but to get another one of those together, I think would be really fascinating to look at.
Yeah, and then maybe we could record it.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of carry through on the tradition, because it is valuable. And who was the Aquarius person who?
Zarathustra, the Aquarian.
Is that his Dharma name or?
Oh, right. Father Yod and the Source family, they all took on new names. And a lot of them legally had their names changed. A lot of them went back to their old names, but some of them kept their Aquarian names and kept the legacy going. And they didn't always agree about how to keep the legacy going.
Of course.
But so they gave me the name Pymander the Aquarian, and so so that I can help carry on the legacy, into future generations. And so,
right.
But in order to do that, I gotta go do some research and find out what Andrew had to say.
Right, interesting. And why did Zarathustra the Aquarian? What was his? Why did he feel that the Andrew work was the crucial piece?
One of these days, I will bring him over.
Call him up and see his take. take on it, and because I do have the book somewhere of techniques.
Well, he'll hear this.
Start looking for now.
And then next time, let's set up a time in the future where Zarathustra and I will both give you a call, and then he can tell you what he remembers. And then maybe if we can maybe get a few more people. Oh, and there was my dad had mentioned, and I think I saw a video. We watched some of the videos at the reunion. There was a public access TV show that Andrew was doing in around the late 80s.
Really?
And some people, I don't know if that was exactly when it was, but my dad made reference to it in an interview in 1990. So it'd be interesting to get those tapes as well.
Yes. No, this all sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely participate in any way possible. I think another one of those meetings would be interesting to also to disseminate some of this. Those notebooks, I would only probably have a couple of them left. There was 2 or 3 different kinds, and but they could be Xeroxed and made more available.
I think knowledge is meant to be shared. I think there's a natural. People want to know things, and people want to share things, and that's because they're all one.
Exactly. I don't have any qualms about that. So I'll give you what material I have.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely up for that. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for speaking to me on the Esoteric podcast.
Yes, thank you very much, and I will find that material for you.
Excellent, and then we'll meet in person. Actually, you're local here, so why don't maybe you, me, and Zed or Z, Zarathustra, get together, and then maybe we can get Enoch on the phone. He's up in Oregon, and we'll have a great episode.
Sounds great, man. Okay.
All right, we'll talk to you then.
Okay, I will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for speaking with me on the Esoterinerd podcast. And if anybody out there has a memory of Andrew, has an anecdote about Andrew, has some information about Andrew, please call 626-367-9254. Or you can email me at edward.c.reeb, and that's R-E-I-B, that's B as in brother, at gmail.com. And get in touch with me, and we'll use that information on a future episode of Very Honored Frater BT's Esoteric podcast. Thank you all for tuning in.